Hey, welcome back to Oopsie Daisy. I'm so glad you're here. We are in the middle of a multi-episode series about the untold truth, the ugly behind-the-scenes, in-depth look of addiction to hard drugs, but also what God can do in those dark, dark places. It's a story of disaster and tragedy and disease, but also of hope and redemption and God's glory. So if you missed the last episode, go back and listen to part 1, which is episode 30. Otherwise, let's get on with part 2.
It wasn't even a thought in my mind. I got some from him that night, and I tried heroin for the first time. So I was 19. I don't think my parents didn't know that I had done heroin, but they knew that I had been struggling again for however many months it had been now. So my family, my aunt actually knew someone who worked at Teen Challenge through their church and got me into Teen Challenge really, really quickly. And, you know, my family was like, okay, we're going to do this. Teen Challenge is supposed to be the best, you know, and it's faith-based. And, you know, I remember my family was very much like, you're going to need God. You need God. And which I was open to and willing to do. And, you know, thankful that they cared enough to kind of set it up for me and get me in there. So, my parents, brought me to Teen Challenge. It was the winter of 2010.
How many times have you been in treatment?
So I don't know the exact number, but it's between 20 and 25. Yes.
Okay, that one shocked me. I didn't expect that.
I mean, I will say I didn't finish a lot of them. You know, some of them even were just for like a week or something. But like as far as actually, you know, getting intaked and admitted into treatment, it's been over 20.
Okay.
And I mean, just to not get it so much into detail, you know, I think for the first, I don't know, 5 to 10 times I went, I was trying to do it so hard, like for my son, for my family too. You know, they were pushing me a lot, of course, but you know, I just wanted so badly to be able to do it for him, to get better for him, you know, and he was my motivation and my reason, but I didn't want it for myself, you know, and I've heard that enough in treatment that it's like, if you're not really doing it for you, it's not gonna last. Another terrible, just messed up, sad thing about addiction is, you know, we can't even do it for our families or our children. You know, I saw that so much with so many women. You know, there's so many women I went to treatment with that had children, you know, and as much as strong as a mother's love is, addiction is stronger. It just is. At that point, things got really dark for me, and more of the things you think about when you think of like a hardcore drug addict and like the consequences that they start experiencing. You know, I was homeless out on the street. Like my family got to the point where there was nothing else they could do. And they, for their own sake, had to kind of give me like the tough love thing. And I remember, you know, my dad had like this piece of like wood, like stuck in his door. So like I couldn't break in their door and stuff like that. And like they had my doggy door for my dog like covered up and stuff at their house. And there were times that I'd have nowhere else to go and I'd try to go there and they, you know, they wouldn't let me in, you know, cause they knew that I hadn't finished treatment or that I had already relapsed again, you know, and they couldn't, I think it's a lot more that they couldn't witness it anymore. They just couldn't stand to watch it anymore. They very much prioritized my son's safety. And that's something that, you know, got them to that point because, you know, I was using around him, you know, and it wasn't good. It wasn't safe for him at all. And they knew that and they could see that. The shame was so heavy over me at that point.
How do you, as a mom now who is clean, how do you come to terms with knowing that those were your choices, that you were using hard drugs around your kid?
It's so hard, Amanda. And it's still something that to this day, when I think about, especially when my son was little, it just brings me to tears anytime I actually let myself sit and think about it. I've forgiven myself, but it's never going to not break my heart. And I had to realize that, I mean, I can't take any of it back. But it did, the shame and that mother guilt and pain that I had for so long just kept me sick. It kept me using because I didn't know how to deal with it. And so it's taken a lot of healing. It's taken a lot of time. And throughout all my treatments and all the past years, my son's 16 now, and I've always tried to keep our bond strong, and it, praise Jesus, is, and throughout everything, we're really close now, and I think that helps, where I can focus on the periods, and I'll kind of go back to that, but there were periods where I was doing well for extended periods of time and things like that. So it was the worst when he was little, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So yeah, I was homeless, like I said, had gone to jail for a couple like 5th degree possessions. So, had the legal consequences, had nobody like around, and went into, so I went to treatment at Teen Challenge, like when I was like 19 or 20, into the short-term program. And that was where my relationship with God changed. And I can still feel how it felt. It was actually called Spiritual Emphasis Week when I came into the program. So I'm brand new in the program, and they do this thing twice a year only for a whole week, and they call it Spiritual Emphasis. And it's like in the morning for 3 hours and at night for 3 hours. And it's, worship, a ton of worship. And then they have like big speakers and, pastors and stuff come in from like all over the country. And it's this big, huge thing. So it was very much Teen Challenge, like times 100, like when I first got there, so I'm coming off the street and coming from, living in hell. But I went to chapel that first night, and there was a worship song playing. I can't remember what the song was, but I can picture the screen, when they have worship and they have the lyrics up on the screen, and it was a red background with the cross is all it was. And the Holy Spirit just flooded me. And I remember it was talking about, like mercy and grace. And it was, just exactly what I needed. And something that I had never experienced that feeling from God. Like I had never experienced the Holy Spirit like that at all, really. But like, I really believed in that moment, it just completely broke down that like, he still loves me, and he forgives me. And so it was really, really powerful for me. And I did end up getting kicked out of Teen Challenge. But my eyes were open to God in a different way. Yeah. And that's something that I, despite continuing to go down, be in the darkness and struggle and make a lot of mistakes and have a lot of pain still, it was something that I clung to, like that hope and that belief and that faith that like God has my back. Like he's gonna always be there. Yeah. And like I can rely on him, and I know that he loves me no matter what's going on. So that just, for my spirit, I think made a huge, huge difference. And, I wish I could say that it was some life-changing thing as far as my addiction.
Yeah, like a one and done. You
right.
meet God and that's it.
Right, exactly. But God had a lot more for me to go through. And I know and believe that there's a reason for all of it. Like when they talk about like there's a worship song that says what the enemy meant for evil, you turn into good. And the enemy and the darkness really tried to get me for a really long time. And it's crazy like that I'm still here, but I do believe I had to walk through all the valleys and all the scary places that I did, and painful places that I did for a reason. But God never, ever let go of me. And I can just see and look back at, countless times that like he was just chasing after me,
As you were talking, all I could think of was Psalm 23. It's on my board over there where it says, surely goodness and mercy and love will pursue me all the days of my life.
Yes.
And I was like, you really were being pursued by his love, by his grace, by his mercy, by his spirit.
Yes.
And you, even if you were running 100 miles in the opposite direction, he was pursuing you.
Yes. And I mean, it was such a, I think I felt like, that battle in myself, like from such a young age, but the spiritual battle was just so intense, like over me and over my life, and with my addiction and with everything with my son, and I just there's just a lot of really, really deep things, but I do know that was why I never gave up. I knew that I was meant for something more than what I was doing. After I had gotten kicked out of Teen Challenge, I got kicked out. For me and a couple of the other girls, we were actually smoking weed. Obviously against the rules, also illegal at that point. It's like we're in Teen Challenge and I'm having this, amazing experience with worship music and learning the Bible and everything. But here I am messing up, getting high. I didn't want my parents to know. So I'm out in Minneapolis and I actually run into this guy, and that was the first time that I smoked crack. Some random guy.
And how does one get into that conversation of like, hey, would you like to smoke crack with me? Like, how does that go down? Like, I don't mean to like laugh, but
no, I know
that's an experience I've never had. And I'm like, what?
Too.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so, I think I had already smoked weed that day. So, I'm high.
Yeah.
And then I'm out there like, okay, my only thing that I want to do to deal with this is to get high.
Gotcha.
So I was seeking out something, and I don't know if it's like I asked him, hey, do you have anything? I mean, that's the stuff that I would have done. That's what you do on the street. Like, hey, you got anything? Like, what you got?
Yeah.
Like, you can tell. But yeah, and that was really scary for me. That was a scary moment because, I mean, I had done coke, but I'm smoking crack for the first time. This guy, he was in his 40s at least, maybe 50s. I'm 20. We went into this broken house or like abandoned house. Things just got weird, and he tried to make something happen. Yeah. And that was kind of my first experience with something like that. And thankfully I got out of it and just left. He didn't push it too hard or anything, but it's just, and that just icky, gross. Like I said, my first kind of look into that world, I guess, and how ugly and dark and twisted it can get. I ended up, it was winter, obviously. I had nowhere to go. And so I did end up going to Park Avenue, and this sucked harder there too. And I was to be in a facility and be in treatment and not be able to be with my family. That was my first year, my first holiday season in that position. Especially my son was, just turned 2. I didn't want to miss that. Yeah. And I didn't want to, and that war was just so strong in me. And, I still wanted to use, but at the same time didn't, and I knew people were expecting me to get better. I just was still struggling so much emotionally. I didn't know how to deal with anything.
Yeah.
And treatment's a lot, you're expected to talk about the things that are going badly and that are hurting, and really look at yourself. If you're going to succeed in treatment, you have to actually heal and, be honest. And I just didn't know how to do that. And there was actually a house manager there who was on Adderall, and I got kicked out of there for stealing her Adderall.
What goes through your head? Like, as you're in this treatment and you have all this motivation and you want to get better at this point, having a hard time opening up and, doing the work that it takes to get healthy and clean.
Yeah.
But what goes through your head when you're at that point of, I'm going to use, I don't care how I'm going to get it, I'm going to use even if I'm in treatment? Like, what's the temptation? Like, what's the draw? Is it truly just the numbing out? Like, is it so much in treatment that you just can't handle it anymore? Or is it what is it that drives you to it?
I mean,
drove you to it. Let's use past tense.
Yeah, right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, that is, but you are you're asking like the core of addiction.
I know.
Which is so hard to answer. I just think it is definitely, it's a mental game.
Yeah.
It's just like if a temptation comes, if a craving comes, you have to be willing to ride it out. And I think at that point, I didn't know how to do that. It was just like, as soon as I'm emotionally distressed.
Yeah.
And the way that I know how to deal with that is to get high.
Yeah. Very loaded question. But I think it's what everybody wants to know is why, like, what drives you to it so badly?
Yeah. It's definitely just a war. That's the battle. And, I think it's just not wanting to deal with anything, not wanting to feel. So like I said, I get kicked out of treatment, and it's right before Christmas. And I remember this so vividly. Park Avenue is a co-ed treatment center. So I had met one of the guys over there, and I knew that he was using. I went over there, and he ended up actually leaving. He just like left treatment. So he was also a heroin addict, but he shot it up. I had told myself that I would never ever do that.
Is there some sort of romantic connection that happens when you do drugs with somebody?
Yeah, there is. It actually, I mean, I guess I'm glad you brought that up, because again, I think I'm shying away from telling how it actually went, but we were having sex, and I knew that he shot up, and up to that point, we were hanging out for whatever. It was probably just a couple days, since we had left treatment. Was watching him do it, and I was snorting it or smoking it. So we had actually had sex, and he wanted to shoot me up first. I said yeah, and I feel like a lot of addicts, shy away from IV drugs because they're scared of needles, which wasn't a thing for me, especially like with all the self-harm. Like, that sounds terrible, but to me it was some like twisted way of like doing self-harm, but then having he would just talk about how much better it was. Yeah. I wanted to experience that, obviously, but it is, like you said, there is something about using with another person, especially if you feel some way about them and have a, physical or emotional or sexual connection with them. So that was right before I was going to turn 20. I shot heroin for the first time. So I called my parents, and I remember using the fact, like, it's Christmas, like, don't leave me out here. But they weren't going to come pick me up. I told them that I need to get into another place, another treatment. I didn't have any other options. But so they actually helped me once again. My family, we had a connection with the Healing House, a faith-based treatment. It was a long-term program, like 9 months to a year. I was willing to commit to that because it scared me that I had gotten to the point that I was shooting up. That really scared me. And I didn't want to be like him. He was in his 40s again. And I was like, I'm not doing this for that. I'm not going to be that person. And it obviously appealed to me even more so because it was faith-based. And I had that amazing experience, and my eyes were open to God in a new way from Teen Challenge, which was only a few months before that. So I knew that was my best chance. Yeah. It was amazing. That program really was amazing. They still run groups like any treatment center, but it's all based around God's word, and they use worship music. That's when I really started to listen to only worship music, and I was hungry for God at that point. My parents were relieved and happy that months were going by, and I was in there and I was doing well. And we had this one group, we were talking about one thing you would say, if you could only say one thing to Jesus, if he came right in front of you, what would be the one thing that you would say or ask him? And I remember that my answer was, please take me with you. Yeah, at that point, I knew enough about who he was and heaven, and just I wanted that paradise that I knew, was my destiny. But I wanted it then. I was 20 years old, and that was my answer, was please take me with you, because I didn't want to have to fight anymore, and I didn't want to have to deal with, the shame or hurting people, or I felt so terrible about myself at that point. And I knew that he was the only one that accepted me fully for who I am and everything that I've done. And so I just remember in that moment, it was just a really big, like, spiritual awakening, kind of how much I knew that, like, if I had him and I could be with him, that's all that I need. And so that was really powerful. And so things were going really well there, and God was showing up in so many ways for me. There was like 20 women or so in the house. The other thing that was really cool about that place is you could have your kids there.
Oh,
yeah.
Like extended, not just like, hey,
like live there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did come and live with you?
He stayed with me. I think that's probably right around the time that I'm talking about, is he came to like spend the night.
Oh.
After I'd been there for, probably like I said, 5-6 months. My parents brought him up but there was women there that had their children, like there was children there all the time.
Wow.
And, they would go to like daycare, childcare, whatever they called it, youth group. I think they just called it like youth group, when we were in group and stuff like that. But yeah, they lived in the same huge rooms. They had huge rooms. And there was, I think, probably 4 or 5 of the 20 women had their children there.
Amazing.
With them all the time. Yeah, really, really amazing. So, and that obviously I feel like was good for me, because it, gave me it kept me in touch with being a mother. Yes. And, made me miss so much more. And so I was so grateful when I was able to start spending time with him there and keep him there and, be his mom for a little short period of time even, was really awesome. So, one of the women there, she didn't like anybody, but me. And, she was like 60 something, and her drug of choice was crack, and we would talk and laugh, and she was funny, but she didn't like anybody else. And so I think she kind of started, feeling like I was the only person she could open up to, kind of a thing. And she ended up telling me that she had been having someone bring her crack there in the house, and she like confessed it to me, kind of a thing, like saying like, I feel bad that I'm doing this, kind of thing. But it also felt kind of just like an ulterior motive in a way. I can't really describe it, but she was like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I've been getting high in my room, and I didn't know how to deal with that or handle it. I was at that point believed that if you get caught using a treatment, you're gonna get kicked out, which for the most part is true. If you're using in the facility, if you have drugs in the facility, you're going to get kicked out. So, I felt like I didn't want to snitch on her and that whole kind of a thing. We could leave and stuff, on pass and everything, but she'd walk by me and go outside and come back in 5 minutes later. And it's like, I knew that that's what she was doing. So it was actually 4th of July, and everyone was, putting their passes in to go do whatever. And, my whole family goes up north, for 4th of July. And so, they were going to be doing that. I didn't have any plans with my family. And so she asked me if I wanted to come party with her on 4th of July. I, debated it for a few days. And I remember after I told her that I would and put my pass in, it was just a couple days before. And as it was leading up to it, like that was where God was really showing up and trying to deter me from what I was about to do. Just different things that were being said, and conversations I had with, staff telling me how well I was doing, and all of those things, or talking to me about, and, just reminding me of all the reasons that I had to keep doing what I'm doing. But I already made the decision, and I think I, at that point, had lingered on it enough in my mind that it was like, okay, I want to go get high too.
Did every one of those conversations sort of feel like a stab though? Just like,
yeah, they did for sure. Cause it's like, I knew inside I had already made my decision. And so it was, again, that feeling of I'm about to disappoint everybody, or, I'm going to be a fraud, kind of a thing. So yeah, it did feel like a stab and painful. but it was definitely one of many moments in my life that God, tried to turn me around. We leave on 4th of July. She had her friend come pick us up he was even older than she was. He was in his 70s for sure. We went to the liquor store. They were going to get a bottle of booze, and we were going to go hang out at his house and just party and get high. So we get there, and it's just the two of them were being really awkward and just kind of giving each other weird looks, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It's like I didn't even know that guy, but I started drinking, and she ended up pulling me aside and telling me, or making a suggestion that I could have sex with him for us to get drugs. And in that moment, I was just, my heart and my stomach just like hit the floor, and I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, I had expected to just come here and we were going to get high, and I realized in that moment that this was like her plan all along. And I had never felt, betrayed by somebody like that. I thought she was my friend, and I couldn't imagine having sex with some 70-year-old man that I don't know. But she made it really clear and was really pushy. Like, well, we don't have any money. Like, this is our way to get high. And
no way.
Yeah. It was really, really gross. And I just remember feeling like I'm not going to get out of here unless I do this. And so I knew that I would get high out of it. And it's like in that moment, I just felt like that's what I wanted at that point, because I just couldn't believe the situation that I was in. And I don't need to go into the details, but went upstairs with him, and she waited downstairs. And like I said, it just is so sick and twisted that someone in their 60s would do that to a 20-year-old girl. I don't really, I think I definitely had a trauma response and kind of blocked it out. And I remember just going back and just wanting to act like it didn't happen, especially going back into such a special, spiritual place. And I just felt so disgusting and so dirty and so ashamed of myself. Plus also knowing that I had used and just being scared of someone finding out. And I didn't feel like I could tell anybody, and didn't want to. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to even deal with the fact that I had done something like that. And so it was really hard for me for a while. I struggled for a few weeks. But the church and Mother Yates and the pastor, really just had made such an impact on me. And, the word and people that were strong in their faith really, got me through that time. And in that summer, they were going to be doing baptisms in the river. Through the church. The pastor was going to do them. And I had been baptized as a baby, obviously. And I remember kind of being conflicted, like, oh, am I allowed to be Like, I've already been baptized.
If I got dunked one time, can I do it again?
Yes, for sure. And it was just explained to me the real meaning of, baptism and being born again and being washed clean and, the Holy Spirit just living in you and you being a new creation and all of that stuff, everything that baptism stands for, and just making that commitment, giving your life over to God. And I just felt so relieved and so grateful that like he gave me that opportunity, because I did just feel so disgusting, and everything up to that point, all the mistakes that I had made and all the people that I had hurt and all the terrible choices I had made. I just felt like it was so symbolic for me to be able to be baptized in the river. And it was amazing, and I won't ever forget it.
Okay, so you have this beautiful baptism moment, this symbolic washing clean.
Yes.
Did a part of you think that everything was going to be better then? That like your addiction was going to be gone, and there was just everything was going to be fixed by this?
I think I definitely had that hope.
Right?
I definitely had that hope. And I think it did something to me on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
But those things didn't just disappear, and they didn't go away. I think that was more me, going forward and having the relationship with God change to even more deep than it had been up to that point. That was the purpose for it, and not being stuck in that feeling so disgusting feeling, and kind of being able to let go of that, at least for now. But no, I mean, I knew that I still had a lot to work through, and it wasn't like I got up out of the water and, it just felt completely different. But,
there's no consequences for anything that I've done before that I just, I'm done. I'm free.
Right. That's not reality. That's not life. And so, the not really friend, but the person I had been in there with, and she was still using, it didn't faze her what she did to me, clearly. She just kept getting high in there. And I did try to avoid her and try to, keep my distance. It was a hard dynamic for me, because I also feel like God's like, oh, people deserve a chance, and how God wants us to treat people and all that. I just kind of remember that being like I had to forgive her. Like I felt like I had to forgive her for what she did to me. So long story short, one night she tells me that she's getting high or whatever, and literally offers it to me. And so I took some of it to my room, smoked it there in the treatment center. So the staff ends up knocking on the door and catching us. They thankfully didn't kick me right out on the street. I'd been there, for quite some time at that point, 7 months or whatever. So they let me call my parents. They let me call somebody. I didn't want to call my parents, so I actually called. And I remember it was his birthday weekend, and I called him and put through that on him, like that I just got kicked out of this place. And he ended up coming to pick me up, but he called my parents, which understandable. But he did come pick me up, and I remember I wanted to see. It was like I just wanted to see him. My family was grateful that I had been doing well for so long, I think, and they didn't know the full extent of anything that had happened. They just knew that I had gotten caught using, and so they ended up letting me stay with them and the treatment center before I left. They had, because like I said, the treatment program was like 9 months to a year. So I was only a few months away from like being done. Right. So close.
Yes.
Screwed it up, but they really wanted to like give me that chance to come back and graduate. So they were in touch with my parents and things like that, but I needed to kind of like being like suspended, or like, I had to be obviously get clean, and they actually were going to kick the other woman out as well. And they were offering me the chance to come back.
Oh, wow.
And she wasn't going to be there anymore. So I can't remember how long it was. It was a few weeks, but my parents let me stay with them. I got time with Carter, and I knew that I was going to be going back there, which was amazing, and I feel like that was another way of God showing me his mercy. It's like I didn't screw up enough to not have another chance. So I just remember feeling very grateful for that. So I ended up going back, and we went to this event, and I ended up meeting, here comes a boy. So I ended up meeting this guy, So we ended up talking on the phone all the time. He ended up finishing his treatment program, moved into like a sober living place. And I wanted to be with him, and I remember they offered, or they wanted me to stay longer than like what would have been my 9 months, just because of what happened.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to like get out and be able to see him.
Oh,
so I definitely let the fact that I liked this boy who was also very, very still fresh in recovery, and was a reason for me to not finish. So I kind of like twisted it with my parents and made it seem like I wasn't going to officially graduate, but I was done, kind of a thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which was a flat out lie, or was it?
I mean, because it really kind of it's like they wanted me to stay for longer, so I didn't get the ceremony.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Type thing, but they can't keep me there also kind of thing. So, but my family,
scheming.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really like a scheme, but it was very, very important for my family that I graduated.
Yeah.
So that was kind of why I had to like skew it with them and kind of make it look like it's like, oh no, I am. We're not doing the ceremony because of what happened a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I kind of just did it like that. That was the reason why they wanted me to graduate, was because they were going to let me move back in with them until I found a place.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to go into like a sober house or anything. Like, my boyfriend at the time, they were going to let me come home and, try to really do everything with and get set up, in that way and everything. So I ended up telling them how we met, and that, of course, trying to make him seem like he's the greatest guy ever, but they knew that he was also an addict, and they were really, really concerned for that reason, and very worried about what was going to happen. And had introduced him to and everything. And for New Year's Eve, we decided to go to a party. We drank that night, and I ended up doing cocaine.
Wow.
That night. And it went right from drinking to doing drugs that night. And it was not long after that we both relapsed on heroin, and we were using heroin together.
Wow.
This is where it just gets so gross. I remember he would come to my parents' house, hang out with me, and we were, getting high in the bathroom, trying to be sneaky or whatever. Oh, like I OD'd when my son was there, but we used, shot up. I went downstairs where was, and I guess he told me that he came down, and I was like face first on the couch. Yeah, he was 3, and he was right next to me, and I guess he said to Tyler, "Mom was sleeping."
Oh, wow.
And he grabbed me off the couch and started pulling me upstairs, and like that pressure on my chest like woke me back up.
Oh my gosh.
So, I passed out from heroin in front of my 3-year-old son, and that's of course more beyond hard to talk about, but it just shows how quickly things spiral out of control once you start using. I wasn't able to put my son's safety first. It was all about getting high.
Were you guys alone with him? Was he like solely under your care at
Yes.
that point? Okay. Did you think you were going to be able to control it? Like, was that ever something in your mind? Like, I don't think I can take care of my son if I'm shooting up heroin. Or were you like, oh, it's going to be fine. I'm just going to do a little bit and it's going to be good.
Yeah. It was definitely more the latter.
Wow.
Like you said, I thought that I could be fine.
Yeah.
And that's how delusional it is when you're using. But yeah, it was just going to be a little bit. And I mean, especially when you're using IV drugs, heroin specifically, it's like a little bit can be way too much.
Huh.
So I never should have been doing that around him. But yeah, I thought that I could control it enough and that I'd be okay. But that was a huge wake up call, obviously. And things only got worse. This is 2012, and that was a really, really hard year for me. But I actually OD'd with Tyler in his car when we were up in the cities, and he actually had to call 911, and I had to be Narcaned several times and took into the hospital. My parents didn't know, like I said, and Tyler had to call my parents and tell them I was in the hospital, and told them that I OD'd. They thought I'd been doing well for 6 months since I relapsed, and my dad had to come pick me up. And yeah, I mean, that was, again, so then there we go. That's definitely like a third near-death experience.
I was going to say, at this point, you keep getting saved and rescued and protected for a reason.
Yeah, for a reason. And it did scare me, but not enough. I kept using.
Was there any legal consequences to anything, like to you ODing with your son? Like, did your parents find out about that, and then there was any consequences for that?
Yeah, they never found out about that, but after the OD, when I kept using, my sister caught me like shooting up when my son was in the bath once. Oh. And so that was when they realized that I was actually using around him.
Yeah.
But there was a lot going on with my family at that point. My grandpa was sick. So on top of what I'm doing and them now knowing that, my son's in danger and they have to worry about that and deal with me and all of it, my grandpa was really sick. He was dying. And so my mom was there all the time. My whole family was, there. I have nurses, 2 cousins that are nurses, and, all of my mom's siblings were there taking care of him, and I'm just out running around getting high. And I did go to say goodbye to him. I got to say goodbye to him, which was really cool. I wish I was sober when I got to say goodbye to him, but we knew he was going to pass. This was the end of July, so I did go see him and get to say goodbye. While I was there saying goodbye, I got into it with my parents because they had found needles in my room or whatever it was, and I was like demanding to get them back because I didn't want to use heroin without shooting up at that point. Okay. And you could only get them at certain pharmacies or without a prescription and everything like that. So I needed the needles. Yes. And I, that was just another super, super low point. It's like my mom's dealing with her dad dying, and I'm concerned about getting what I need to do drugs. Wow. While that was all going on, they knew that obviously I needed to go get help again. So I ended up going up to Unity Hospital in Fridley. I missed my grandpa's funeral. That was something I remember, writing a letter to him in there. And, my family still means so much to me. But I hated myself for that. And I had lost my grandma when I was 10, but losing a grandparent that you've been close to your whole life is hard anyways. And I wasn't even there. And I, had acted the way that I acted and was so messed up and so deep in my addiction. And, I just felt so much guilt and so much shame. So I do remember just kind of journaling to him and trying to work through that stuff while I was in there. But it was really hard on my family. And after that, there was a lot of really deep wounds with my family, and they were done at that point. They were done.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask was where were they at with everything? And
they didn't want calls from me. They wanted me to go in, get help, get better, but things had gotten so bad that, at least for now, they had to cut me off. Yep. Kind of a thing. And they were very much prioritizing, they were prioritizing him and his safety. I didn't know this then, but that's actually when my parents were parents and sister were working on opening up a CPS case. So I was in treatment. I did end up going to a place in in St. Louis Park. Right before that is when I found out or like got like served that I had a CPS case.
And what was your reaction to that?
Right away, I felt angry, which is completely unfair and shouldn't have been my response. I should have had much more humility and whatever for that. But no, I felt angry. I didn't want them to take away to me, the one reason I had to keep fighting to get sober. It was like, don't take that away from me. Yeah, it just did something to my identity as a mother. It was like I'd been in treatment up to that point, knew other moms who had CPS cases, and it was just like I never, ever would have imagined that I would be someone whose family, nonetheless, cared so much about him and had seen me be so messed up and so destructive to everybody around me that they wanted to make sure that I was healthy to even be able to be around my son. And that was it was hard for me to accept. And so while I was in Wayside, I had to have supervised visits with him. They would bring him there, but there was a worker, and my parents weren't like filing for custody or doing anything crazy like that. They just wanted the legal CPS case to make sure that was going to be safe and that I, was going to get better, kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
And so, I was definitely trying to keep his dad on my side, because it's like, I knew it's like, okay, this is going to go one of two ways, and like, I don't want him to think that he needs to keep him from me.
Yeah. Was this in like, sounds really bad, but in kind of a manipulative way you wanted to keep him on your side? Or was this truly like an attempt of, I really want to be with my son?
Both.
Okay.
I would definitely say both. I think the way that I was manipulating him is because I knew he was still in love with me at that point. And I knew that. That's where I, used that.
Was there any sort of stringing him along at all? Like keeping him on the hook romantically almost?
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, when I mentioned, still calling him when I'm in treatment and doing all that thing, it was, I was in a lot of ways leading him on, and, kind of using the excuse that, oh, well, I need to get better. I need to handle my addiction, but kind of still like leaving the door open.
Oh, like maybe after. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Which, took me kind of a long time to see that clearly and be able to really accept and acknowledge like how unfair that was to him, and that I really was doing that. Okay, so while I was in Wayside, this is where things also get interesting. As we've discussed, relationships become an issue in treatment.
Yeah. It seems like relationships for you were kind of always an issue, treatment or not.
Oh my gosh, thank you for pointing that out.
Just had to say it, just keeping it real.
Relationships, I had some serious codependency issues as well. Yes, so very true. But so I was in all women's treatment center. Mm-hmm. But there was a woman who was older than me, and she was a lesbian and like was openly a lesbian. And I had this huge crush on her. Which I know I'm coming out of nowhere.
How, up to this point, had you had any feelings for women at all or been attracted to women at all?
I knew you were going to ask that, obviously.
Okay.
And I would say yes.
Okay.
Actually, the girl who I stole the car with.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I was kind of like in love with her in a way, in a really, just unhealthy, toxic way, but definitely actually had like feelings or, some kind of physical attraction.
Yeah.
And knew that, way back then. That was when I was 15. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started going on like walks together and everything. And, she kissed me, on one of our walks, and it was, I mean, I think for me, especially because she was older and she was like so sure of herself, and I mean, she was beautiful and like really, you know, a really cool person, but I think I was just like seeking some sort of like validation. I was a little bit obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And the treatment center could tell that they knew she was gay as well. Like I said, she was very open about it. And so they were concerned with how much time we were spending together, and they kind of like, you know, started catching on to kind of what was going on. And so they put us on like a no talking contract, like we couldn't talk. So that sucked. And that was just, you know, another way that like, okay, I was on the counselor's radar, and, you know, they knew I had my CPS case, and my son was coming to see me, and they're, you know, then I was like, oh, this is not good, you know, but it was that part of me, that codependent part of me, and, you know, wanting that love and that attention and all of it, that I just still was having such a hard time with. And so it's really crazy. You'd think that I'm making this up, but I'm not. So within like a month or so, another older woman showed up, and she was also gay. So literally like round 2, and it was...
So you go for this woman, this new...
Well, I don't. So that's where it's like, I really tried to learn my lesson, and I was like, no way, like this is not happening again. You know, and it felt like, why God, why would you give me this? You know, it just was, because it was just something about both of them that just like I was drawn to. But she very much like kind of came on to me, or like started showing interest in me. And I explained to her, I was like, you know, I just got in trouble for this. I was like, I can't be doing this. Plus I'm not really gay. I remember saying that, like being very much like, you know, I'm not even gay, doing that whole thing. And so it just was really weird, and a lot for me to, I guess, figure out, you know. And it's like, I know that your sexual orientation, your identity and everything is, you know, hard for anyone to kind of figure out. And it's like, I'm doing that in the midst of trying to heal from my addiction and get clean and all that stuff. And it just was a little messy.
Where did your faith come in here at this point?
Yes.
I'm curious how you felt having this relationship with God, and just where you're at and getting baptized, and then reconciling that in your head of having a couple lesbian relationships. And what was that like?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question. It was really conflicting, for me, because I felt like, I mean, I guess it went both ways. It's like, I knew God in the way that he loves me and accepts me for exactly how I am, and no matter what. But then I also believed in, you know, in the Bible, and this isn't right. Like, God doesn't want this for you. This is not how he meant things to be. And that's not to say, you know, I don't want it. That's a big can of worms to open, but
for sure. It's a whole separate conversation.
Yes, whole separate podcast
but
for that.
That's just factual that the Bible does say that.
Yep. Right. Yeah. And it does. And so, it caused a lot of really big conflict in me. And, I think it probably actually had impacted me a lot more than I even realized, because I feel like I quickly went back into like okay, I have to hide this part of me kind of a thing.
And I want to break in here too and say that I think there's such a pattern to your story about every time you step out of what God calls good for us, you know, some of the boundaries that he sets for us as far as, you know, drugs and alcohol and behavior and relationships, same-sex relationships. And those aren't necessarily rules, but they're boundaries that God sets for us to keep us healthy and happy and whole. And every time in your story that you chose to step out of that, just the immense shame and the immense feeling of wanting to hide or wanting to escape or not being able to show it. And I think that's one of the things that people really miss is like, God doesn't want to punish you for these choices and punish you for the things that you're struggling with.
Right.
But your own self and life begins to punish you because of that emotional darkness that is associated with walking outside his will for you.
Yeah. Any time we are going against what God wants for us, or anything that, spiritually isn't right or whatever, it's gonna come out sideways. It's gonna cause discomfort. Our souls are gonna be restless because we're not actually aligned with the Holy Spirit. And that's very, very true. That was an awesome thing to say, or awesome.
Just a little observation as I've been listening.
I really appreciate that.
All right, let's pause right there for a deep breath. Tune in again next week for part 3. You guys, if you thought part 1 and 2 were heart-wrenching and hard-hitting, you just wait. Do not miss this next episode, releasing next Friday, May 2nd. Check it out.